Okay, so we are going to graph sine and cosine some more, this time with transformations. To do this, we're going to use actually a very similar transformations, or the same transformations you've used before in algebra. So your book calls these transformations C, and then we talked about A, and we'll use sine, although it's the same for cosine. And then we talked about B, and then x minus D. And the C, or we'll actually say y is equal to C, is going to be the midline. It will also be the vertical translation, or we'll say vertical shift. So it will be what moves the function up or down. And you keep the sign the same as you always have with the vertical translation. And then D is known as a phase shift, and it will move left or right as a horizontal transformation. So we'll just say left or right. And you change the sign. Okay, so for this function, to graph this function, we're going to go about kind of the same way as we have before. So if we want to graph this function, the first thing we're going to do is state the period. So the period in this case is 2 pi over b, which gives you a period of pi over 2. In my amplitude, be careful with your amplitude. It is the number in front of the trig function. It is 1/2 in this case. And then we also want to say that this graph is going to move up 1 from this 1 right here. So the graph will move up 1, and so this makes the midline y is equal to 1. And I actually like to put that on the graph first, because what that does is it gives you, so we'll make this 1 and this 2, it gives you a new x-axis. So you make this a little. And so this midline gives you the new x-axis. So everything's going to be kind of in reference to that. Okay, we have our period of pi over 2. So let's go ahead and get our 4 tick marks here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Or better, go out here and say if this is pi over 2, half of pi over 2 is pi over 4. And then half of pi over 4, we'll do that over here, is pi over 8. And then we need 3/4 of pi over 2. We could count. We could say 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, and 3 pi over 8. And that's one way to do that. Let's go ahead and write that down. And that works when you have a constant of 1 here, or a coefficient of 1. You could also say, well, what is 3/4 of pi over 2? And you get 3 pi over 8. Okay, so let's see. This is my y-axis. It's kind of hard to see. And then now we can sketch in the sine curve. So we've taken account the period, we've taken account the shift, and then my amplitude is 1/2. Let's go ahead and put that on. That means I'm going to go up 1/2, so this would be 1.5 or 3/2, and then down 1/2 from my midline. Okay, and then sine goes through the origin, and so this will give me a point right there. It's not actually the origin of the x and y axis, but it's been shifted up 1. So now I'm at 1, 0, 1 for where I'm starting my graph, and then I go up to the maximum point, and then down to the midline again, and then down to the max or the minimum point, and then back up to the midline. And we can sketch in our curve from there. We still want to look at domain and range. Domain is all real numbers still. It always is for sine and cosine. Ooh, that wasn't too good. And then my range is my minimum to my maximum. So it is 0.5 or 1/2 to 1.5. And that is graphing a sine curve with a vertical shift.